All right, we're going to start assembling our rotor HUD, and this is what the rotor blades will be attached to. We've got our one piece here that the arms that attach to the rotors will be sitting on. We need to make sure that these can move freely, so we're going to have to sand inside here just a little bit to make sure that these move freely. And then we've got the 2 aluminum rods. We're going to be using the smaller diameter of the 2 aluminum rods. It actually slides into the arm part, so we'll have to make sure that we've got the right size arm piece there, aluminum piece. So we're going to take a little bit of sandpaper and we're going to sand inside of here just lightly. We want to make sure that our arms can turn freely. It doesn't take much, just a little bit. And remember, always pre-fit. It's always good to dry fit everything before you actually put things together. So let's see how that looks. Okay, so that moves freely. That's what we want. That moves freely, and then again, as we're getting ready to assemble, we can double check to make sure things move freely. Alright, so we've got all our pieces out. Now we need to cut this small aluminum tube to size. Now the size is big enough to fit inside these little slots right there. So we want to be at least a little bit shy, but not too proud on the slots. So we'll take and we'll use our knife to kind of hold things steady, and we'll move it around and we'll kind of mark the spot we want to be. Now I don't want to use the tip of the knife because that's weak and it could snap the tip, so we'll roll up to the heel of the knife, then we'll straddle it and we'll just kind of roll back and forth and cut through the tube. Now we're going to straddle it with our fingers because we don't want the pieces to go flying off. So there we have a piece. Let's check its size. This is where having tweezers handy helps. Okay, that's a good fit right there. So now I got to make 2 more. And then we'll be sanding them down to make them smooth fitting in there. Okay. So now I've got my mark. I want to make sure I'm not too big or too small. And we'll roll her through and snap her off. Blade bit in deeper than I planned. And there we go, another piece. Let's check it for size. And it looks good. Actually both about the same size there. 1 more to go. If you make them a little long, you can sand them off. That's not a big deal. And right through. So you see, you actually have the ability to make 4 pieces if you need. So if you have a short piece or a piece that's too long, you can sand it down. And if you mess up one, you can kind of come back and fix yourself. So it's not too bad of a thing. You want to be long enough that you're not too close to the thing, because you will be putting glue here. And if you're short, the glue will touch the wooden piece, your pivot piece, and then it won't be able to move properly, and you'll have to go in and sand and cut at the glue to get that to work. So our next step will be putting these on. We're going to sand them a little bit, make sure our edges are clean, and we just take the sandpaper and lightly sand the edges. And then you this one. So we'll finish sanding these edges, and then we'll get back and we'll start mounting them on the hub. Alright, now we're going to start the assembly of our rotor. We're going to need thick super glue. We're going to need our super glue accelerator or instant set. The hub piece that we talked about earlier, our arms, and the aluminum pieces that we cut. So the way this works is we're going to slide the aluminum piece in through the hole, and we're going to hold it there. And we're going to come up, this has a tab on one end. So we can see a little tab right there on the end. Hold it up close. And we're going to take that tab and we're going to slide it up through the hole. And it's going to lock in right there, and then we're going to flip it over. And this, having a pair of tweezers can help at this point in time. We're going to center that piece right there. Now remember, we wanted to make sure that this actually moves freely. We don't want it to hang up. We don't want it to be sloppy. And I'm going to center that with the tweezers. Now we're going to get super glue, or thick super glue. We don't want to get it on the armature piece. We only want to get it on the aluminum piece and the disc. So we're going to put a dot right there. And then we're going to hit with our accelerator. I'm going to check to make sure we got free movement. We do. We're going to move over to the other side, and we're going to hit this side with a dot. What I like to do is have it a slight angle. Even though this is thick, I don't want it to run onto the armature, so I have it at a slight angle, so if it runs, it's going to run away from the armature. Hit it with the accelerator, and then check, and we have free movement. That's all we're worried about, is making sure we have free movement here. Okay, so that's nice and easy to move. So we're going to do the rest of them the same way. We'll get all three of them glued on. And we're going to make sure that we can freely move each time. So we'll get our next piece. And again, this is where having small tweezers kind of helps out a little bit. Oop. Be very careful if you can not to lose these. You don't want to lose them. Slide that in. We're going to center our little aluminum piece. And these aluminum pieces are made so that they don't fall through, they just rest on top of. And we'll do our little dot of super glue. Little dot on the other side. Again, being very careful not to touch the armature. Accelerator. Accelerator. Check for movement. So really good here. Now if you accidentally glue your armature, you're going to have to use your X-Acto knife with a fine blade, and you're going to have to go in there and cut away at the super glue until you get it loose. So that moves nice and pretty. That one's nice and pretty. Get our last one in here. Come in from underside and lock that over. Let's get the piece in the right position. Now you can see why it's so important to be very careful when you're cutting the aluminum, to make sure you have it long enough. You don't want it too long, but you want it long enough. There's our glue, dot of glue, and then an accelerant. And you could spray the accelerant, but it tends to get all over the place when you do that. So there we have our armatures. They're glued in there nice and pretty now. And we'll set that off to the side, let that accelerator, or dab it, give it a few seconds, then we're going to dab the accelerator with the paper towel to make sure we don't have any excess accelerator on here. Alright, we're now up to doing the center spur, or the rotational part for the hub. So we're going to pull out that other piece of aluminum tubing that we found in there, the larger diameter one, And this actually fits into the hub unit. Now the hub, the top is the side without the aluminum tubes. The bottom is the side with the aluminum tube. So when it comes out of the tube, it opens out this way, and then the stops keep it from going any further. So this is the top. So this slides in just a little bit, like that. And we're going to check it for trueness too, because we're going to be gluing it in place there. So we're going to put it on our graphite rod after we cut it, and we're going to check it for trueness. So what we need to do first is we need to cut this, and we need it at a 3/4 inch length. So we've got our X-Acto knife. My little dots here on my board, you can't see them as well as I can, but the tube is 1 inch in length. I've got dots for 1/4 inch marks. So I'm going to go at 1/4 inch here, so that gives me 3/4 inch on that side. And we're going to go ahead and again, this is kind of hard to cut, but you got to be careful that you don't shoot it off in some other direction and you lose part of it. There we go. Now we've got burrs on the end. You can feel them, you can see them. We need to sand those off. So we're going to take, and we're going to put it on our sanding block, and we're just going to sand it flat. We want it flat and smooth. Now while I'm sanding, I'm turning it with my fingers. So I'm actually taking it and rotating it with my fingers to level it out. Then we're going to take the burr off the side. And it feels pretty smooth. Now we want it as smooth as possible because these are going to be butting up against each other and spinning. So the smoother the surface, the better the spin. Okay, and then we'll get the little piece. We're going to be taking this little piece and setting it off to the side. But we still need to go ahead and sand it and get it nice and smooth. Take the burr off of it. A little bit harder to sand this one, it's so small. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set that little piece off to the side. Now we're going to insert this into our hub, and then we're going to glue it in place. So we're going to get all our stuff ready for that. We're going to get our thick CA glue. We're going to get our accelerator, and we're going to get that going here in just a second. All right, so we've sanded our little aluminum tubes, and we're ready to use it. This is the top part with the little tabs here that keep it from the joints from extending up, and then the bottom is the part with the tubes. Now we're going to insert our aluminum tube in carefully into the hole, and we want to get far enough in that we can have something to glue to. So we've got it sticking through just enough that we have something to glue to in there. And then we're going to put it on our shaft, and we're going to give it a couple of spins. And we're doing this to make sure that, one, it fits through the shaft, and two, it spins. Now what I'm looking for, I'm looking at the hub, and I'm looking for, is it straight or is it wobbly? Obviously if it's wobbly, you can kind of see how it goes back and forth. This hub is kind of going nee, nee, nee. So we're going to keep going until we get it straight and that it's not wobbling. right, that looks pretty good right there. Okay, so we'll pull out the graphite rod. Now it's very important that we don't get glue anywhere near these little tabs. So we're going to glue it from the bottom side. And we'll get our glue ready and we'll get our accelerator ready. So we're going to put a little bead of glue right here on the edge. And again, this is thick CA glue. We don't want it inside the tube, we just want it on the edge of that dowel. And then we're going to put our accelerator on. Dab there, little dab there. And now we're going to check real quick and make sure we still have full motion of our I'm trying to lock up, but we'll just move it and keep it loose. So really, really important to quickly move things around and don't let the glue set up. Otherwise you're going to be sanding and trying to fix it. I'm just going to keep moving this and wiggling it to make sure the glue doesn't set up on it. Okay. So that's our hub assembly. All right, we're on to our next step, which is going to be assembling our nose cone assembly. So we've got the body tube block, part of the nose cone, the front of the nose cone, and our two wooden discs that have the 4 holes. We're not using the 3 hole yet. These are the ones with the 4 holes. These are going to slide over the graphite rod. And the hub assembly will also go on that. First thing we have to do is we have to cut a hole in the bottom here of this shoulder part for the nose cone, because one of these discs will be fitting in there, and then it's going to have the graphite rod going through it. So we can just take our hobby knife and we're just going to score. This is a fairly thin plastic, so we're just going to kind of score a little hole around here. Doesn't have to be really big. All we're trying to do is just get enough space to put the wooden dowel in there, and the wooden disc, and then the graphite dowel or rod. Okay. This is where having a very sharp hobby knife pays off in tenfold. Okay. So now I'm going to flex that piece out of there. And you just keep making small, shallow cuts. And then I'm going to definitely be difficult cutting through this sometimes, but just be patient with it. There we go. Okay, I've got a small hole through it, so I can actually take my little snips. I've got a great pair of little scissors here. And I can cut my hole a little bit bigger using my scissors here. Just remember to be careful. Later on, you can trim off any excess plastic that you don't have if you're trying to shave weight off. This isn't a competition model. This is just going to be for the wow factor again, so I'm not too worried about having a little bit of extra plastic there. I am a little bit neat freak about the burrs and stuff, so I'm going to kind of run the sandpaper in here to clean off these burrs. end off here. There we go. All right, so now we've got to insert one of these wooden discs into here, and we're going to seat it about where this ridge is on the shoulder assembly. So we're going to put it down in there. We're going to kind of push down, see how tight it fits. We want it to be even and level down there. So that's a little tight. Let's see. I want to make sure it's even down there. I can use shine a light through it to look. Then we can check to make sure it's not going to be too awfully tight trying to insert it into the rocket. Again, always dry fit as much as you can. Just make sure you're not going to have issues with something later on. If you don't dry fit now, later on you're going to have problems. So I'm going to see if it'll slide into the rocket body. It will slide in. That's important. All right. And I'm going to look inside. Not quite level. I've got a high side. Right here. Kind of push that down. I want this to be as level as possible in there. So we are in there. What I'm doing is I'm actually shining the light through it to look at it and make sure it looks neat and level in there. You can take your graphite rod and lightly put it in the end and rotate it, and that way you can actually look through and see it that way also. But the main importance is that you have a nice, true and level in the tube or in the shoulder. Because it's going to be spinning around. If it's not, you're going to have an issue with wobble, and we don't want wobble. So, if you need to, I might have to pull this out and sand it a little bit. I think I'm going to sand it a little bit. It just doesn't want to sit in there straight. So we'll take our sanding block and we'll just turn it and sand at the same time. Okay, I'll slide it down in there. All right, she looks a lot better this time. So we're going to take our thin, odorless, foam-safe super glue, and we're going to apply a bead of that inside there. Okay. And once we've got our bead inside there, go ahead and take our kicker or our accelerator and drop that in there. All right, and be sure you're using foam safe. Very, very, very important. All right, now our next one, we're going to go ahead and use the graphite rod for this part. We're going to get the graphite rod on. And then we push it to that shoulder there. Again, if it's too tight to start with, we can always adjust it. And then we'll look up to the light. Are we squared up? Gotta make sure we're nice and squared up and we're not funny wobbly. Go. Push it in there. Now we can look at it and see if it's straight or is it wobbly. We can actually sit here and see that it's in there straight or not. And it looks good to me. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our thin CA in here also. Nice little bead. All the way around. And we're going to put a bead of it right here on top of that shaft. Now the shaft is sticking out just a little bit, up to 1/4 inch, no more. And now that is fixed and on there. So we've got our shaft together. Now we need to put our nose cone assembly on. So first of all, we need to make sure it's going to fit into the rocket. So again, we're going to pull the rocket off. We're going to slide it in there. And we're going to make sure that everything is flush. We don't have any funny gaps. Okay, and then we're going to carefully slide it off. And what I'm doing is I've got it on there and I'm rotating it. I'm looking for, if it was off, we'd have a gap like that. So I'm centering it up, making sure it looks good on there. Rotate it, making sure we look good. And then we're going to pull it off. And then we're going to apply our foam CA again, our foam safe CA. Onto the nose cone. I'm just checking one more time. Okay. So again, this is thin foam safe CA. We'll do a little bead. Wipe off our excess. And our kicker. And again, wipe off any excess. So now we've got our nose cone affixed to our lower hub assembly, our upper hub assembly. All right, now we're attaching the hub to the nose cone assembly. Again, the part with the tubes on it is the bottom, and then the top is this end. So the long shaft goes to the top, the short shaft goes to the bottom. We're going to slide that over our graphite tube, or graphite rod. And if you have a little sticking problem, you can use an X-Acto knife inside the tube to get any burrs out. On the outside, you'll use sandpaper. And we'll slide that over. And we'll check, and we have free spin, so there's no problem with that. Now the kit comes with either a wooden, came with the plywood discs, a wooden stopper to keep your rotor assembly from moving up and down the shaft, or that little 1/4 inch piece that you cut off and sand it smooth. You can use that also. So we're going to feel that again, make sure it's nice and smooth. If it needs to be smoothed up, sand it and smooth it up a little bit. Okay, then we'll slide it over the rod. And we'll slide it up. Now we don't want it pushing the rotor assembly and hub up into the nose cone assembly. We need to back it off just a little bit so that it has a little bit of play in it. And then we're going to add 1 drop of the thick CA glue to hold it there. Now we don't want anything going up on this rotor assembly, so I'm going to actually hold the rotor assembly after I get everything placed where I want it. I'm going to give it just a little bit of a gap, and then I'm going to add my drop of CA. And by holding the rotor assembly, hopefully I don't have any CA run up to it and touch that tube there. We don't want anything getting that upper shaft stationary. We want that shaft to be able to move. So 1 drop of thick CA. I got a bubble. Let's get rid of that bubble. There we go, bubble gone. 1 drop of thick CA. Make sure it's where I want it. Then we hit it with a drop of accelerator. And then we're going to spin our shaft. And we are good. So it's very, 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 very important to make sure that you don't let anything touch this upper rotational hub shaft. It only goes on the very bottom part of that lower shaft. Otherwise, you're going to have problems later on with it not being able to spin. And all the time when you're gluing, check, make sure your arms are moving. Make sure that whatever's supposed to spin spins. Just constantly check to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to be.